How's it going, digital world? Welcome back to another Spliced In Later, and it is movie review time. In a world where we don't do this as often as I would have liked. When I started this show, I thought I'd be doing this every week. I do it now once every 3 months, but it's very exciting. I'm glad to catch a new movie, a new anticipated movie, and be able to speak to all you wonderful people out there about whether or not the movie was good. If you are familiar with my show, if you've listened to my previous reviews, you probably know that it's going to be positive, as is most things, but maybe not. Maybe this might be different. You'll just have to listen and find out. If you hear meowing in the background, my cats have decided to play zoomies and to have a chat with each other, which is adorable. I love it. But even now, one's going after my cord here. So yeah, if you hear some kerfuffle in the background, don't be alarmed, don't panic. It's just mischief mayhem. Anyway, what are we doing today? Today we are reviewing a new movie, which, depending on where you are in the world, you can go to the movie theaters and watch it in the theaters, or you can jump onto Disney Plus, and for a ridiculous fee of $35, you can watch this movie as well. It's up to you how you want to do it. I went to the theaters. I felt safe, but I know in certain parts of the world that may not be possible, and I understand that completely. There were hardly anyone at my screening. There were 2 other people, so I feel like most people are opting for the Disney Plus experience, which is totally fine. If that's what you want to do, however people see movies these days, that's okay. We just have to embrace the new world at this point. But today, we will be reviewing the newest Disney animated film, Raya and the Last Dragon. I've been saying Raya in my last couple episodes where I was getting ready for it, and apparently that was wrong. It took a while for them to say her name in the movie, and they said it so forcefully, as if to say to me specifically, you've been saying it wrong. No, it is Raya and the Last Dragon. Now, if you are familiar with this show, if you're familiar with my previous episodes, you know that I'm a big Disney hack fraud lover, all of that. I can't get enough of Disney, especially Disney animation. We've done our top 10s, we've talked about animation ages, whatever. I gushed and raved about the last Disney animated movie that came out, Frozen 2, back in 2019. It was one of my top 10 films of the year. I love the Frozen movies, I love the Wreck-It Ralph movies, I love the Zootopia, Moana, Tangled, all the new stuff that's come out recently. I love the Renaissance days with Mulan and Hercules and Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King. I love going back to the old days with the Jungle Book and the 101 Dalmatians and the Sword in the Stone, all those old classic Disneys. And I even really love the Disneys which are considered the black sheeps, the non-musical ones, the 2000s, your Atlantis, your Treasure Planet, your Emperor's New Groove, your Lilo and Stitch, Brother Bear. There's very, very few Disney animated films which I do not like. And the reason I don't like some of them are for very specific reasons and aren't really the movie's fault. It's more a product of the times that were made and the times that are now. So when a Disney animated movie comes out, by all that stuff, I'm going to hold it to a higher standard. I expect a lot out of it. And most of the times I'm not disappointed, but I do have to remind myself not to go in being like, this has to be the greatest thing. It has to be better than all the other Disney films I've seen before. As long as it hits a standard of a point that I've reached with other Disney films that I can enjoy it, then I have to accept to myself at that point that it's a good movie and not push for anything more than that, which is something I had to remind myself when I started watching this movie. I immediately started judging it in my head. I started going, that's a bit strange. That's a bit sudden. This is a bit off, I think. Very, very scary 30 seconds before I kicked my brain, because what followed was a delightful movie. Something I had a lot of fun with, great time. It's going to be one of my favorite Disney films, I'm for sure. If I were to redo my top 10 Disneys, it might even crack the top 10. I'm not sure. I'd have to reflect on it and rewatch it a couple more times. But it's absolutely great. It's worth going to the cinemas to see. It's worth renting on Disney Plus if that's what you want to do. However you see it, it's definitely a good time. I don't want to spoil anything about this movie. This is one of the few movies where I did not see a trailer, I did not see a TV spot, I did not see a poster. Even though the cinema I went to was trying really hard to make me see something, there were posters of it everywhere, there were TV spots everywhere. And I had a look at the stuff as I came out afterwards, and I'm glad I didn't see it going in, because it spoils a lot of what's in the movie in terms of characters involved, the people that Raya runs across in her adventures. So if you can, if at all possible, avoid anything about this film. Avoid learning who's in it, avoid learning how long it is, avoid learning what kind of animators worked on it, anything like that. Anything that might clue you in as to what this movie's about or who's involved or what's going on. Because it probably won't hinder your viewing experience, but it's perfect if you go in going, all I know is that it's called Raya and the Last Dragon. As such, normally I give you a summary, a roundup of the movie. I will do that in the vaguest sense of the words here. All I will say is that Raya and the Last Dragon is about a young woman named Raya who lives in this wonderful world, a very, very vibrant, colorful world, marred by chaos and violence, in a world that used to have dragons, doesn't really anymore, as you can probably tell from the title, The Last Dragon. For a series of events involving how shit the human race is and how shitty people are to each other, a great evil is unleashed upon her world, and in order to stop it, she has to go on a quest to find certain things that will help her stop the evil that's coming. And joining her on her journey is the Last Dragon, a wacky character called Sisu. And on their journey, they will encounter new lands, new people. They will pick up an assortment of characters along the way to join them on their quest. They will see that the thing they have to do is not so black and white. There's a lot of gray area going on here. They will learn personal things. Raya will learn personal things about herself and the way she views the world and how the world could be seen and how it is seen and all of that. Right. Even saying all that too, I'm worried that I might have given too much away. So that's it. That's all we're going to talk about in terms of plot. I will say for the plot, it is a great story. It is something unique to Disney, I think, that they have not done before. It is very dark. The themes that are explored in this movie are dark and sinister and impacting. Not in a terrifying way, not in a way where you couldn't take your kids there and the kids will be scared by what's going on. But the implications of the things that are going on, the end result, should our main characters fail, is pretty horrifying. And a lot of side characters end up suffering some pretty crazy fates, which, thinking about in my mind, is something that I would never want to happen to me at all. Something that's happened in a few movies. So that concept being in this movie, while it's not new, is new for Disney. And it's good to see them treading that sort of ground. Sometimes Disney might play it safe. I noticed in the last couple of films with Disney, we haven't really had a villain. We haven't really had a negative force or persona that is up against our heroes. There's a lot of either circumstances where there is no bad guy, but just a element of nature or force that our heroes have to encompass, or there is a sort of villain, but it's misunderstood, not quite a villain, needs to grow and evolve and become a better person. We haven't really had a villain for the sake of a villain, just to be a sleazy scumbag, since Frozen, I think. While the villain in this movie is not quite that straightforward a villain, there's some morally grey area and the character goes through her own personal journey, which is interesting to see. For a lot of the movie, she's doing very villainous things for the sake of standing in the way of our heroes, and that was refreshing. I enjoyed having that force embodied in a person, in a character, something I could relate to, which was pretty good. The animation is spectacular, but at this point, it would be surprising if it wasn't. The steps that have come in the last few years for Disney and the things that they can accomplish with their animation is nothing sort of astounding. Looking at the actual background, the world that Raya lives in and the world that she travels across, things look so real. The water, the landscapes, the sky, the rain, everything feels like it's actually real life. The only things that look animated are the characters. And I think at this point, if they wanted to, they probably could animate pretty convincing human being characters. But the charm of a Disney film and of a lot of animated films is that you know this is animation. But in terms of everything else, astounding. This is a very colorful film as well. For all the dark themes that are going on in it, it definitely has the most vibrant colors I've seen in a while in terms of all the different colors, green, red, blue. You're familiar with colors, you know what they are. They look incredible on the big screen. Here's where I would say if you have a choice between going to the theater or watching this on Disney Plus, go to the theater. I think watching this film on the big screen really enhanced the visual spectacle of it all, which was absolutely lovely. I had a great time. I felt my eyes had a treat by getting to see the vibrant characters and everything going on in the film. The character of Raya is delightful. I love her. She's voiced by Kelly Marie Tran, who I'm glad to see is doing something now. It's just Star Wars. She can just forget all about that mishap and just move on with some better roles here. I would not say that Raya is a typical Disney princess. Her character isn't really a princess. She's probably more in the same princess status as Moana is in her movie. More the daughter of a prominent figure from the place that she's from. But her confidence, her ability to adapt to things, her prowess with a sword, her sense of humor, everything just rings true. She's one of the more relatable characters, I think, that has been a protagonist in Disney classics. You could see yourself hanging out with Raya. Raya would be a cool friend that you would want around, which is great. It's fun to follow her on her journey. She is instantly likable. There's no point where you go, you're being terrible. She is also human. She makes mistakes. She makes assumptions that we as a human race does. So you don't watch it and go, how could you do such a thing? You go, yep, I would probably do the same thing in your shoes. The last dragon, Sisu, voiced by Awkwafina, is alright. Here's where the movie just falters a little bit for me, in that they try really hard with Sisu and with a lot of the side characters that get jumped in. They really try to push them as these funny comedic characters. The backstory behind Sisu, her being the last dragon and what she went through to become that, and what she has to do future in the movie, is some serious stuff, some dark stuff. And when it pushes into that and it shows you that and it embraces that story, it's very interesting, heartwarming, or heartbreaking to listen. But a lot of the time, especially in the opening bit where we're introduced to Sisu, they try really hard to go, this is a kooky character, this person is funny. And so many jokes are thrown at you in the space of a few minutes. You're like, okay, so this dragon's personality is comedy. All right, cool. And there's a lot of one-liner punches that fell flat. I don't know about other people in the movie theater, but no one was laughing at any of the jokes that were actually being told. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm not a funny person. Maybe I don't get the humor that's being done. But the humors were just so out of place with the dark storyline that was going on and the purpose. By the time we meet Sisu, some really bad things have happened. The world that Raya lives in and Raya herself are in a very terrible place. So I get you want to bring in a bit of comedy relief to lighten the mood, but it's just so out of place and so one note, and it doesn't really let up. It's constantly tell a joke, 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 be kooky, be funny, say a thing, do a thing, don't do a thing when I'm supposed to do a thing. It doesn't feel natural. It works for a side character like Olaf in Frozen, but for a character that's a secondary protagonist and is so prominent to the dark storyline that's going on and what needs to be done, they can be a little funny, sure, but don't push it forward. That also happens with a lot of the side characters that Raya meets. They are very interesting characters and they all have their own tragic backstories, and whatever brings them into Raya's path and then lead to them continuing with her on the story is natural and it makes sense and it's interesting. But they all also, every introduction with them is an over-the-top comedy thing. The first person Raya meets is all about cooking food. The second person Raya meets, it's funny because the thing that character is doing is strange for a character of that particular age. The third character is over the top dumb, and so dumb that when it comes to a point of, oh my god, this person's been through so much, they're still going, but he's also dumb, and isn't that funny? So that would be my advice for Disney and future things. If you want to pursue this darker avenue, I love it. I support it wholeheartedly. Ease up on the humor, please. And please, I don't know, if you feel like the humor's not working, don't just double down on it, because eventually if you say it enough times it's going to be funny. It's not really going to work. However, aside from that, the characters are all interesting. Sisu's fine when Sisu is not being aggressively Awkwafina. The villain character is very interesting. I love her role. I love the things that she is doing, her flip-flopping on what she wants to do and what she has to do. There's a lot going on there, but I can't get too much into it without spoiling it. So I'll just say, once you know who the villainish is person in the movie, and you will know pretty early on, watch them. It's interesting to see how that's played out and how they are portrayed. It's great. And to finish on a positive note, because that's the only real negative thing I have to say about the movie, is just the humor. If the humor landed, or if it was not so in your face, this would definitely get a higher mark, but just because of there's so much of it and it doesn't quite work, it really drags it down a bit. But taking that aside, as I said, the darkness of the story is great. People who are watching this are going to be reminded of a lot of other things that are really cool, and they're being played effectively. Some would even say homaged in this movie. To describe this movie's influences, I would say, is a mix between Black Panther and Avatar: The Last Airbender. The different lands, zones, worlds of the main big world that Raya lives in, the colors and the themes and the things that they do is very reminiscent of the 5 tribes of Wakanda, but with the elements and the defining traits of the nations of Avatar: The Last Airbender, the Last Airbender, the Fire Nation, the Earth Nation, the Water Nation. There's even a character in here who reminds me very much of Aang. If you are familiar with the show, you'll know it when you see him. But because I love those things and I loved how effectively they were combined in this film, it also helped to really enhance my enjoyment. I really think it's a testament to Disney to have taken these specific plots from different things and combine it into their own story. And the world building in here is fantastic. You immediately get everybody's drives. You understand how the world works and why it's going the certain way it does and what the people in it have done to bring such terror upon themselves. You also know immediately at the start what they can do to fix it. It kind of detracts that there's an opening monologue here that sort of explains something to a point where you know that the threat that's coming, you know how it can be fixed, which takes away that intrigue of wondering how our heroes are going to make it out of the situation. By saying at the start how they can do it, then you're just waiting for them to do it. It's not surprising, but it's still heartwarming and lovable and interesting enough that you're intrigued to get to that point in the story. So when it's happening, you can go, I knew this was going to happen this way, but I'm still enjoying it and I like it and it's great. Summing up, I will say Raya and the Last Dragon gets a solid 8 out of 10 for me. As I said, it would have been higher if it hadn't been for the humor, but it definitely this is still a high mark and it achieves it tremendously on wonderful animation, a very interesting and dark story, incredible world building influenced by all these different things that I really like and has worked really well in here, and a tremendous lead character in the terms of Raya and wonderful side characters that are all interesting with their own stories to tell and contributions to bring to the film that, if only is not marred down by humor, that doesn't work, feels good. There's no character in here that feels like they're just there for the sake of selling a toy or to be comedy for the sake of comedy. Everyone has a reason to be there, which is good, and I like that. I will say, if you've got time on the weekend and you feel like you're safe enough to go to the theaters, definitely check Raya and the Last Dragon out in the theaters. I think that's the better experience. But as I said, it will be available on Disney Plus from sometime tomorrow on Friday, I believe, for $35. If you'd rather watch it in the safety of your home, put it up on a big screen somewhere. It's a wonderful time. You will have a great time. Disney's done it again. I don't know if they'll ever not be able to do it, but great way to start off 2021. My top 10 movies of 2021 only has one entry, but I feel like it'll stay on here for a bit. I think in a normal year, it would probably have a good chance of making the top 10. But we'll just have to see. Hopefully, there are plenty more movies to come, and we'll have an interesting competition to see who makes it. Yeah, Raya and the Last Dragon, great movie, loved it. Go see it. Thank you much for tuning in. It was wonderful talking to you about a movie. I had fun. I should be back to you in a couple of days. I'm going to watch the long-awaited sequel to Coming to America, Coming to Number 2 America, which is available soon on Amazon. I'm optimistic, but also cautious in terms of the quality of the film with these types of sequels and Eddie Murphy's track record in general in later years. But I will keep an open mind and I will be back to you to let you know what I thought about it and whether you should watch that or not. But in the meantime, be safe out there, love one another, all of that jazz. That love one another, that's a good thing to remember when going into this movie. Raya and the Last Dragon, great movie. Go see it. You've been spliced in later. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time.